talk with you today. We are at an important part of the semester as we enter the last 6 weeks. And so we thought it would be hopefully a helpful time to talk about ways that we feel like you might best support your students through the end of term. So that's the way we've thought about and framed our discussion today. My name is James Holsinger. I'm Executive Director of the Koenigsberger Learning Center and Director of Learning Assistance, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as well.
Good afternoon. I'm Monica Isbell. I am the Director of Disabilities Resources.
Hello, I'm Dr. Brandy Probst, and I'm the Director of Elon 1010, which is our first year advising seminar.
I'm not sure if anybody can. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Regina Artis, and I am an academic advisor within the Office of Academic Advising.
Good morning or afternoon. I'm Sam Dunn, and I am the Academic Support Coordinator for Learning Assistance.
And Casey Milton's here too. Casey and Sam will be answering questions. So before we move any further, I just want to let you know, either in the Q&A or in the comments, you should be able to write questions. They'll be fielding those questions and perhaps answering them in real time. If there are questions that are coming up repeatedly, we'll have time at the end as well so that other panelists can weigh in. So feel free to put those questions in either the chat or the Q&A as we go along. Before we jump further in, just a quick mention of the goals today. So we're going to introduce the KLC resources just as a reminder to you what resources are available to your student. We are, as I mentioned, going to offer some tips and strategies for how parents and families can best support their students at the end of the semester. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have time for questions and comments as well. So quick reminder here, within the KLC, we have several units. So Academic Advising, the Office of Academic Advising, and our Elon 1010 unit are both within the KLC. Academic Accommodations and Accessibility, that currently is technically still called Disabilities Resources. That office is undergoing a name change on June 1st. It will be Academic Accommodations and Accessibility. Same office, same mission, same goals, different names. So just putting that out there. And then Learning Assistance is another component of the KLC. So these are the different units within the KLC. You'll be hearing more about the services that are provided within them as we move forward.
And so in sharing some information about Elon 1010, which is the first year advising seminar again, at this point in the semester, if your student is undeclared, then they are still being advised by their Elon 1010 instructor / advisor. And so we are in the midst of pre-registration. And so those students need to schedule an appointment with their Elon 1010 advisor because they do need to be approved by the advisor in order to register for courses. So again, if your student has not declared their major at this point in the semester, then they need to meet with their Elon 1010 advisor. And that is the same person that they had their Elon 1010 course with last semester in the fall semester if they are a first year student. If they are a second year student who has not declared their major, they would still be with their Elon 1010 advisor. And so they need to make that appointment here pretty quickly because registration begins in a couple of weeks with their advisor so they can discuss their courses and what courses they're thinking about taking in the fall semester. We also want you to encourage your students to declare their major. If they have not declared their major, they can have this conversation with their Elon 1010 advisor during that advising and registration appointment about what they're possibly thinking, but also the process to declare their major. And with that being said, that deadline to declare their major is April 30th. That is a priority deadline. So any student that declares by April 30th, they will be in its assigned an advisor after registration has ended. And registration ends on April 23rd. And so after April 23rd, they will be assigned an advisor, which is why we have that priority deadline for April 30th. Again, another thing we want to encourage students to do, encourage your student to be responsive, okay, to their advisor, to their faculty in terms of staff emails. For their Elon 1010 advisor, they probably, if they have not received an email, they should probably receive an email this week about meeting for advising and registration. So being attentive to those emails is really important, but also being attentive to e-warnings from professors. And so e-warnings are our early alert system. So when students are not doing well in a course, professors will send an email to the student notifying them that they're not doing well, and then they will also copy their Elon 1010 advisor or their faculty advisor on that email. And so it is important that students are attentive to that email and responsive, because the professor will typically give some instructions or some directions on how the student can catch up on those courses. We're also talking about success coaches. If a student is assigned a success coach, or if they receive an email from academic support or our student care and outreach office, please encourage your students to respond to those emails, because we are trying to check in on them and help them think about their needs or any success strategies that they need if they are struggling or if they are needing additional help with courses or academic support. And for academic advising, because I think Regina was having some internet issues there. So other things about academic advising, if your student is a declared student, meaning that they have declared their major and they have moved on to a faculty advisor, meaning that they're no longer with their Elon 1010 advisor, what they need to do for fall 2025 class registration, all students need to do this, but they need to check on track to identify their date and time to register. Whether they're meeting with their 1010 advisor or their faculty advisor. They need to contact their advisor to schedule a meeting, which may be a little bit different for them for those who are with 1010 versus a faculty advisor. They may need to reach out directly to their advisor to schedule that appointment. In order to prepare for those appointments, whether they're meeting with their 1010 advisor or a faculty advisor, they should review their progress, which is also their degree audit, prior to meeting with an advisor. So that they're prepared for their registration appointment to discuss the courses they're interested in. And then of course, they're going to meet with an advisor to discuss their future plans and to be approved to register. They want to make sure they register for classes on their designated day and time. So every student is assigned a specific day and time to register. They want to make sure they log in maybe 5 to 10 minutes prior to that designated time on that date, so that they can already be logged in, and then when their time comes to click register, they're already in the system. And then things to be mindful of that maybe you want to share with your student: winter 2026 study abroad registration, and spring 2026 study abroad early action application. Those open April 1st through May 15th. And so this is an opportune time for your students to discuss this with their academic advisor, so that they can make sure they're not only planning for the fall semester, but also planning for their possible courses for winter and spring. So for winter study abroad registration, students must register for the prep course during the fall semester in order to get access to be able to attend that winter term abroad. So I'll repeat that again. There is a prep course that takes place in the fall semester prior to the winter study abroad. And students must register for that prep course during fall semester in order to get access to attend that winter term abroad program. If they are not registered for the prep course that takes place in the fall semester, they will not be able to get access to attend that winter study abroad program. And so students that register for that fall prep course, they will get information about how to pay the deposit for that winter term program. And then if they do not pay the deposit by the deadline that is sent to them via email, then they will then go to the student on the wait list. So it is important that they pay attention to their email and any information that they receive about the winter term study abroad program once they register for the prep course in the fall. And then of course, again, spring 2026 study abroad early action application opened on April 1st and will close on May 15th. So students should be discussing this with their academic advisor, because they do need to have a good idea of what courses they may want to take while they are abroad, because the process is a year-long process in terms of planning.
So from disability resources, a few things to remember. One, the student needs to make sure they've completed their semester request and share their official accommodation letter with their professor and have a conversation. Observation we had around midterm was that students hadn't done their semester request. And so they were trying to book for, midterm exams and were not able to. And so students need to know that they have to do a semester request each semester. We encourage that to be done at the beginning of the semester so that students are not in this situation. And then so it's not just doing the semester request, it's also sharing that official letter with the faculty member, and also having a conversation. Here's something to be aware of. Faculty is not obligated to provide a student their accommodations if the semester request and conversation has not occurred. So the student can't just get their letter on one day, then expect the faculty member to have their test submitted to us by the next day. So students need to be mindful and plan about that. The other thing with final exams, please encourage the student not to wait and schedule final exams. Final exams, we do have a deadline. So for spring final exams, the last day to book is 1 p.m. April the 25th. So students, we encourage students to go ahead and book your final exams. If something changes where you don't have to take your final exam or they're doing something different, you can always cancel. So to go ahead and at least have an appointment. And then students who fail to book will have to take their exams in the classroom as is without accommodations. And the last thing as a reminder is that during our exam time, we will not be reviewing or addressing any accommodation requests, be it new or supplementals, during our final exam period. And actually, it's getting close to the point now where if students have not submitted a new request or supplemental, they're running into a kind of a deadline for us to be able to get things done in a timely manner so that students could, if they're approved for accommodations, be able to book. So those are just reminders from DR.
All right, and then learning assistance. So what I'm going to talk about here in relation to learning assistance, this is available to students throughout the semester, but obviously as we get past the midterm, it's really important that they be taking advantage of what we have to offer. So we are College Reading and Learning Association CRLA certified tutoring program. So these are peer tutors that help your students at no additional cost to them. Your student is able to book up to twice a week per subject with a tutor. So for instance, if they're in an accounting class and an economics class, they could see an accounting tutor twice a week and an economics tutor twice a week. And they could also, for both of those examples, come to a drop-in session as many times as they'd like. There's no limit to how many times they visit a drop-in tutor. So what we would like is for students to make those sessions, whether they be one-to-one or drop-in, a part of their regular schedule, so that on like Monday afternoons, they always see a tutor or they always come in to drop in to get additional help, especially if they're worried at all about that course. We do have many additional resources that your student can take advantage of. For instance, we have accountability groups that it's not too late to sign up for. They can go onto our website right now and indicate that they'd like to attend an accountability groups. Those are groups where there is a tutor who leads them, and in the first few minutes of a session, we'll talk about some sort of a learning strategy that they think might be helpful, and then they just work. And sometimes they work independently, sometimes they work together, and at the end of those sessions, they go around the room and say, what did we get done during that session? We've found that students really like these sessions. It gives them a little more structure, particularly if they're in their first year in college and missing some of the structure that might have been there for them in high school. That's a good option. We have many student resources that are asynchronous and available on our website. So I would encourage your student to go to our website and look if they are having questions about time management. We have an entire section there where they can find activities and resources for them. We also have student success consultations. So if your student is feeling that they need additional academic support, but they're not sure what the best first step is, they can book an appointment directly with myself or Sam or Norma Rodriguez, who's also in Learning Assistance. Any of us in Learning Assistance will meet with them. We want to get a sense for what's going on, listen to them, hear what their concerns are, and then we'll be able to direct them to the most appropriate resource. We also, as you can see here in the little grid, have peer success coaching. So that's available to your student, and they can have 2 sessions per week with a peer success coach. As you'll see here, almost everything we do is available in person or online. Most students do take advantage of the in-person option, but to be as accessible as possible for almost everything we offer, a student could choose to meet online as well. So lots available in Learning Assistance. Would encourage you and your student to go to the Learning Assistance website where you'll be able to read more about all of these services. And when I mentioned booking appointments, that's all booked through our website. We have an online booking. It's very easy. They can do it on their phone, their tablet, their laptop. So that's a little bit about what Learning Assistance will do and will continue to do over the next 6 weeks. I do want to mention here that May 12th, which is the last day of classes, is the last day that Learning Assistance offers these support, because we are primarily peer operated, those students will be, who work for us, will be doing their final exams. And so after that last day, May 12th, they won't necessarily be able to have an appointment or come to a drop-in session. So the time is now to go ahead and look out across what their courses are and say, what kind of support might they need in the next 6 weeks so they can finish as strongly as possible.
Just some final information about important dates. Again, I apologize for you not being able to see me on camera, but as finals approach, I'm sorry, just a couple of things to keep in mind. Encourage your students along the way. I'm sure that they're feeling a lot of stress. Celebrate their successes. Also, make sure that you are validating their fears and referring them to the proper resources. Be a coach, not a proxy. Listen to them, encourage them, help them make good decisions, and be supportive of their decisions along this way. That means their majors, their courses, clubs that they're involved in, things that they are anticipating doing or becoming participants in, just being a supportive listening ear to your student. Burnout is real, and stress is real. So encourage wellness and self-care for your student. Make sure that they are taking every advantage of all the opportunities on campus for the plethora of resources that we have that really cater to self-care and wellness on our campus. We have a lot of things that are very beneficial to all students on campus. If they are in doubt about where to go, they can always reach out to our office for assistance, and we can point them in the right direction. And make sure that they're connected to the proper resources for their particular needs. Discuss their final grades. Ask them questions, targeted questions about how they feel about their courses, what grades are they anticipating, what types of things that they need to do, and who they need to speak with to make sure that they are prepared for their finals, and making sure they're maximizing all of the points that they could possibly get to make the best grades that they can. Over to the left, you see the dates that are approaching quickly. Classes in May 12th. Final exams run May 14th through the 19th. Final grades will be posted by May 22nd. Of course, graduation is May 23rd, and summer school session 1 begins on June 2nd. Again, if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to our office.
And to help you think about how to reframe the questions that you may ask your student while you're being supportive, we wanted to provide some examples. And as a parent, I'm also a parent of a college student. I have a sophomore in college at this point. And asking these questions are really important to get the information that you want and need. And so a lot of times we'll ask questions like, how are you doing in your classes? Or have you had any challenges this semester? And we'll get a one-word answer. Or a nod, maybe, where we're saying, where they say fine or good. So it doesn't really give us a lot of information. And so we want to provide some examples of things you can be asking right now so that you can get the information that you need in order to be supportive and to be a coach for your student. So instead of saying, how are you doing in your classes and getting that one-word answer, think about asking open-ended questions such as, what are you learning in your classes? What strategies are you using to keep up with your assignments? And based on the student's response, you can recommend, maybe you should go to learning assistants, or maybe you should reach out to disabilities resources. Maybe you should think about an accountability group, right? So share some of the information that we shared with you today based on their responses. Next question, a similar question we may ask is, have you had any challenges this semester? Probably going to get a quick no. Right? But instead of asking that, say, what challenges are you having, right? They're college students. They're having some kind of a challenge with something. And what resources have you utilized to navigate the challenge? It might not be an academic challenge. Maybe it's a challenge with their roommate, or maybe it's a challenge with thinking about, how to get enough sleep, or making sure that they're putting in self-care. So asking that question so that you can get a more direct answer. Thinking about saying, when do you register? They might just say in a couple of weeks or in April, but ask more questions in terms of, what courses have you discussed with your advisor? Let's discuss your graduation plan. So students, again, like we talked about in a few slides ago, students should discuss their courses with their advisor, so they should have a plan. But students should have also created a graduation plan in their first semester doing Elon 1010. So they should have somewhat of a roadmap that helps them think about what they may want to take. But they should also be discussing that every semester with their advisor. So if they haven't met with their advisor, then that's where you can encourage them to go ahead and make that appointment. You can encourage them to go see when they register. Or you can ask them, what did you discuss with your advisor, so that you can kind of hear the things that they're thinking about taking in the fall semester. And then lastly, how are your midterm grades? I asked my son that, and he said, good. And then I said, I need to see the screenshot. I want to see the screenshot of the midterm grades. So midterm grades at Elon came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago, right after spring break. So all of your students should have midterm grades. And so instead of saying, you know, how are your midterm grades? What are your midterm grades? Where can you access them? Let me see those, right? And so your students can access their midterm grades in OnTrack. They can see their grades in OnTrack. They need to log in with their credentials, and they can see their midterm grades. Their midterm grades were either an S for satisfactory or an AR for at risk for failure. And so that S means that they're doing well. They might have a C or higher in the course. And then if they have an AR for at risk, that means that they could have one of two things or multiple things. It can mean that they have a C- or lower in the class, or that they are missing assignments, they're not doing well on exams, they're not engaged in the course. And so those are things that are important to know, especially since we have about 6 more weeks of the semester left, and they need to go and talk to their professor to talk about how can they catch up, what do they need to do in order to do better. So think about asking your students and reframing the questions that you ask so that you can get the information that you need to support them.
You've heard throughout, several folks have said, you know, that there's obviously stress and disruption for students, and we tend to see that very commonly at this time of the year. So when we meet with students and talk with them, we're often talking about burnout. So they have been in school, you know, taking classes since late August at this point. Outside of a couple week break here or there, it's probably feeling a little bit like a grind. And with 6 weeks to go, that can certainly cause some stress. So we just wanted to talk briefly about some resources that are available to your student. First, you know, reaching out to their advisor for help in figuring out what the appropriate resource is. So Regina and Brandy have talked about this already, but they have an advisor. If it might be their Elon 1010 advisor, it could be a faculty advisor. They could also come into our advising office and talk with someone and indicate what their challenge is. That person will then help them find the appropriate resource. So there are lots of resources at Elon. We want to get them to the correct and appropriate person first. So have them reach out to their advisor. This week, on Thursday, is going to be the last day for them to withdraw from a course. So that means in the next 72 hours, having a conversation with them. Is there a course that they're worried about not doing well in? Is there a course that they're worried about failing, for instance? If so, they need to gather as much information as they can over the next 3 days to make the most informed decision possible by Thursday. So that's April 10th of this week. That's really important. Another deadline to keep in mind, medical withdrawals are possible through the May 2nd deadline. This is a process that happens through the Office of the Dean of Students. If there is, you know, something medical related, and that includes mental health, has occurred during this semester, a student could apply for a medical withdrawal. It's important to note that what would happen if they applied and received a medical withdrawal is that all of the courses for that semester, the grades would be wiped out. So it's not something where a student could choose, for these 2 courses, I'm going to take a medical withdrawal, and for these other courses, I'm going to stay in them. That's an all or nothing. And so there are certainly instances where that makes the most sense and where that's appropriate. But just keep in mind that May 2nd is the deadline for a medical withdrawal. For exam absences and rescheduling policies, so that's all going to go through the Office of the Registrar. If your student feels that they are going to be absent for an exam, or if they need to reschedule an exam, they need to reach out to the Office of the Registrar, who will handle that. So that's the 4th piece there on the left. On the right-hand side then, there are workshops happening throughout the academic year and this semester that can help students manage stress and disruption. That we have had several of these within the KLC, for instance. So checking the library website, neighborhood events, there are always things going on within the neighborhoods, and many of these are focused on helping students manage their stress. Self-care, so there are botanical gardens, the Turner Theater, there's an aromatherapy room here on campus that I know some staff in KLC have utilized. So there are things in place where they can just walk in and de-stress. The third piece here is really important. So we have a counseling center where they can meet with a licensed counselor to talk about their stress and anxiety, et cetera. Having them look at the website there, scheduling an appointment. They also have group sessions that are that we're hearing more and more from students are helpful. Timely Care is the other piece here. So Timely Care is an app that your student can download on their phone, and they have access to this through Elon. It's provided through Elon, and they can talk with someone in a moment of stress, and they can schedule regular appointments, and they have a certain number of appointments that they're eligible to have at no additional cost through Timely Care. So encourage your student to investigate that, put that on their phone, and maybe try it out if they feel like that might be helpful to them. So we could talk about a lot of other examples. There's other things that students can be doing and other resources available to them. But we wanted to highlight maybe the most important ones here and a good first step for your student if they are struggling with stress and feeling disrupted in these last few weeks. I think that was Monica. I'll jump in. So questions, thoughts, and comments. We have on the right-hand side here, the QR code will take you to the KLC website. Bottom left, we have our Instagram page. But we have plenty of time if folks have questions or thoughts or comments that they'd like to share, and we can answer.
I see you talking. So go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to share a question that I feel like would be best answered out loud, potentially by James. It's about success coaching. The question is, I have heard that the current success coaches will be leaving. Is there a plan to replace them? Also, is there a plan to expand this resource to not just meet with students to plan their studies, but also to help them focus and use executive functioning skills and body double while they study or complete assignments? I think maybe also clarifying the role of the professional success coaches might be beneficial for this one.
Yeah, so the professional success coaches, there is a shift in the way that they're going to be managed. So right now, those are 2 fellows within the KLC. The university is currently hiring 2 professional success coaches. At this point, it's a little bit unclear. There's some lack of clarity on how exactly they will work with students and whether your student might be able to book with them. What we can say is that the peer success coaches are not going away. They're within the KLC. They will still be bookable by your student, and they can and would love to work with your students on exactly what was listed there. So mostly executive functioning. Your student can book up to 2 appointments per week. One of the things that we say about the peer success coaching is it doesn't work as a one-off. It's not something that you can halfway through the semester decide you're going to have 1 appointment. It works if a student commits to it as a weekly practice and just says, like, on Mondays and Thursdays, for instance, I'm going to meet with my peer success coach. And so that is going to continue. Professional success coaching at Elon is going to continue. Again, a little bit unclear how that will work. And I think the question of whether that's going to grow, almost certainly. We're getting started with those professional success coaches now. We know that students are looking for that support, and it's very likely that that will grow in the future. Brandy, were you going to jump in maybe with something?
Yes, but I think Casey may have answered that question in
okay.
the chat. I was going to clarify the registration process for winter term abroad programs, and I think Casey, you may have answered it in the chat. But just so everybody else hears it, so winter term abroad takes place during winter term, which is in January. However, there is a prep course that takes place in the fall semester prior to that winter term. And in order for students to be able to attend the winter term in January, they must be registered for the prep course. Students will register for that prep course during registration, which takes place this month. Yes, winter term is J term, same thing. Sorry, we students call it J term. We actually call it winter term. So J term and winter term is used interchangeably. But so students register for fall semester in April of this month, right? So students are going through registration for fall semester. So if a student wants to attend a winter term abroad, they must register for the prep course that takes place in the fall semester in order to get access to go on that winter term abroad in January of 26. So hopefully that clarifies that process. So which means they need to register for the prep course within the next coming weeks, whenever their registration date and time is, which is in the fall semester. of that prep course. So each winter term program has an associated prep course that goes with that winter term program that takes place in the fall semester. So hopefully that clarified that process. They won't actually go abroad until January of the winter term. The prep course takes place on campus, and it is really a preparation course. They meet the faculty who will be going with them abroad on that program, and they will also meet the other students who will be going with them on that program. And so that is what that prep course is for winter term. I see that there's another question that says that so a full semester abroad does not have a prep course. The only terms that have a prep course is a winter term. So a fall semester abroad, a spring semester abroad, or a summer abroad does not have a prep course.
Another question here about, can we get a copy of these slides? Yes, I'll send these slides to Will. Is that something that you could then distribute to people that are registered or that attended?
Yep, and we can put them on we have a webinar, family webinar website that we'd be happy to upload them to as well.
Great. So we'll get those out as soon as we're done today. Leave space for any other questions. You can use the Q&A and we'll do our best to answer.
There is a question that I'm answering. I'll also type it here, but there's a question in regard to someone said that their daughter filed a grade appeal. And so grade appeals start with the faculty. So your student, and I'll also attach the policy itself, but your student, I'm not sure where in the process the students left off with the grade appeal, but the grade appeal for a course starts with a faculty member. And so if the student did not speak directly with the faculty member, they need to start there first. And then once the faculty member makes their decision on the grade appeal, if the student then wants to continue the appeal, then that appeal would need to go to the dean of the school or college that that course is in. And it goes kind of through that process. I will drop the link to the grade appeal policy in the chat so that folks can have access to that. But it really depends on where your student left off in the process. And that's hard to tell without having additional information. But I will drop that link in here.
Couple other folks' questions that are in the chat that are being answered right now. Any other questions? When and how will, so here's one. When and how will the student find out the date and time for his or her class registration? Brandy, will you go through the on track where they might find that?
Yes, so students can find their day and time for registration in OnTrack. They'll need to go to their course plan. So they'll need to go to log into OnTrack, go look at their course plan. And then when they look at their course plan, they need to plan for the upcoming term. So they need to have planned for fall 2025. So they need to have added fall 2025 so that they can add courses for fall 2025. Once they add the term fall 2025, then a blue bar will show up. And in that blue bar, it will have the designated day and time that they will register for courses. For most students, that should already show up because when they completed their graduation plan last semester, if they were a first year student, then they planned ahead for all of the terms. And so their day and time should already show up on their course plan because we've had them do a graduation plan that included fall 2025 and future terms. So they really just need to log into OnTrack, go look at their course plan, and then find the blue bar that has the day and time.
I also linked the registrar's just general registration schedule. But again, there are steps before they're able to actually register.
All right, I know Brandy's adding the link to the question that's in there now. I don't see any other questions. Thanks very much for taking the time to join us today. We're obviously happy to continue answering questions. If you go to the KLC website, you'll find contact information for each of us and contact information for the offices. Please feel free to send us your questions. Encourage your students to come see us. We are here and obviously looking forward to meeting with them and helping them through the next few weeks as we approach summer. So thanks again for taking time today, and let us know if you need anything.